Hi friends, Joe here, and this is episode number 201 of the Decahedron Fandom Podcast. Yeah, I did a little name change. We're changing it up a little now that I've done 200 episodes. Instead of being laser focused on games, podcasts expand into all things fantasy and science fiction related, but still with the special love of tabletop games. In fact, this episode is still about tabletop games. But before we get there, because we're expanding it, during the last, since the last episode, I watched the Amazon Prime series Spider Noir with Nicolas Cage as the titular Spider Noir, Ben Reilly. It was pretty good. If I have any complaint, it was like the whole time while you're watching it, you're like, this could have been great. But they just missed these little points here and there that made it really good, but not great. And maybe that's a me thing, right? Because I saw what could have been. I'm like, aw. But yeah, it was good. It was fun. I liked it. No origin story. That's a lie. It's hinted at, but it's not one of those things where, we're going to spend 8 episodes talking about the origin story. So it was, I liked it. I approve. Thumbs up. All right. So this episode is a follow-up to the last one, episode 200, where I had James and we talked about the Holmes edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And I got a feedback, and I'm going to read it. So I got a comment from Retro DM Ray. Oh, I get it. Retro DM Ray. Okay. And Retro DM Ray said, "This is good, sirs, but y'all should dig into and cover the rules for us. Show us the divergence between it and AD&D. And then it says, give us your old school DM tips and tricks too. It could be really special. Thanks." Thanks for that, Ray. As for DM tricks and tips, there's 199 episodes of those. So dig into the back catalog. Watch going forwards. I'm sure I'll talk into those. I don't give a whole lot of, I don't know what I would call tips. I just talk about the way I do things. I am definitely not one of those people that thinks that my way is the right way and the only way. But there are people who play like me and who enjoy the way I play. And so I talk about that. But for this one, I'm going to focus on the first part of your question where you said, dig into the rules. Tell us about how this diverges from AD&D. And that was a bit of a challenge because AD&D really isn't my game. It was, after the Holmes edition, that's what we went to back in the 70s and 80s, But around 84, 85, I gave up D&D for GURPS. And then I went into things like Fudge and all that stuff. So if you ask me, how does this diverge from original D&D, I could have done that off the top of my head. But when you said AD&D, I'm like, oh, crud, I have to go back to my way back memory machine and remember these things. And I didn't want to do a page by page for every page in the book. So I went through the Holmes edition and I went through things off the top of my head and things that I had to, were unsure of. I whipped out my old Player's Handbook and went through there. I didn't go through all the books. I only went with Player's Handbook. I didn't worry about monsters and DM stuff. Didn't really matter. Again, it's only 50 pages. So I made a list. Let's take a look. The first difference is in stats. And really the only difference is that Holmes edition doesn't have the exceptional strength. Once you get 18 strength, then you do the percentiles, so you can have like 1857 or whatever. That was an invention for AD&D. That wasn't original D&D. It wasn't in the Holmes edition. And it wasn't in any of the other Dungeons & Dragons sets going forward. It was in AD&D, first and second edition. It's dropped for third edition, in fact. So that's the first difference is exceptional strength. Other than that, it's the same core 6 attributes: strength, intelligence, dexterity, wisdom, constitution, charisma. If you want to say that AD&D includes unearthed arcana, then, then there's no comeliness or whatever. But yeah, so the first difference between Holmes Edition and AD&D is exceptional strength. The second difference between the Holmes Edition and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is that the Holmes Edition is the first edition to have race as class, depending on how you want to look at things. Of course, in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, you had, your basic classes. We'll get there in a second. And you had your races, and you could mix and match them, right? You could say, I'm going to be a half-elven ranger thief, whatever. Actually, I don't know if that's a legit combination. I'm going to be an elven magic user, whatever. In original D&D, I like to say that original D&D was also racist class, but a lot of people disagree with me. But if you look at it, in original D&D, dwarves could only be fighters, halflings could only be fighters, and elves had that weird fighter magic user thing happening. But where the other people are right is that once the splat books come out, like Greyhawk, suddenly you have the thief, and any race can be a thief. So there it's different. In Holmes, race is a class, so you don't get to pick both. If you want to play a dwarf, that is your class. You are a dwarf, which is pretty much just a fighter with better savings rolls and the special abilities. If you're playing Holmes, there's no reason to play a human because it's capped at 3rd level, and so the level caps don't matter and all that stuff. So, so if you're playing a dwarf, you're playing a dwarf. If you're playing a halfling, you're playing a halfling. And if you're playing an elf, the elf is this little fighter magic user multi-class thing. It was kind of that way in original Dungeons and Dragons, but it was worded weirdly. In OD&D, it said that you chose each level, which class you wanted to be. Not each level, each adventure. If you were going to be your fighter or your magic user, and the XP went there, and that's the one that leveled up, and that's the level you used. And Holmes, they split it, and this is the first time we see a true multi-class where you see your fighter magic user, and you go up in levels in both at the same time, which was pretty cool. So that was the second difference. The third difference is races. So Holmes has human, elf, dwarf, halfling. That's it. Those are the same races from OD&D. Once you get into AD&D, AD&D adds half orc, half elf, gnome. So So AD&D adds character classes that Holmes Edition doesn't have. The fourth difference is the character classes. In Holmes Edition, you basically have fighter, cleric, magic user, thief. That's it. Now, I said you had races class, but as already explained, the races are just... Actually, they're all fighter, other than the elf, which is fighter magic user. So there's no real difference in classes there. In AD&D, for classes, you also have, like all the subclasses, you have illusionist, you have druid, you have ranger and paladin, and then, in the back of the book, you have the appendix, you have the monk. So you have more classes in AD&D than you do in Holmes. The fifth difference between Holmes and AD&D are the alignments. In AD&D, you have the 9-point alignment system. We talked about this in the other episode. In Holmes, you have the 5-point alignment system. In OD&D, in the beginning, and in all the D&Ds that come after Holmes, you have the 3-point alignment system. So what we mean by points, in original D&D, you have one line, right, with 3 points on it. On one end, you have law. On the other end, you have chaos. And in the middle, you have neutrality. In Holmes, they add another axis. They add the law and... Whoops, we have law. They add the good and the evil. And of course, they keep that in AD&D. It wasn't really added for Holmes. It was added in an article that Gary wrote for the Strategic Review. And everyone started using it. And I don't know if it got into the splat books or not, but it definitely, when they made Holmes, they put it into Holmes. And everybody was using it. But so your alignments are lawful good, chaotic good, chaotic evil, lawful evil, true neutral. That's it. Those are the 5. You don't have any of the neutral X or X neutral, right? You don't have lawful neutral. You don't have chaotic neutral. You don't have neutral good. You don't have neutral evil. Those don't exist. Those are all added for AD&D. So it's only 5 alignments. We call that the 5-point alignment system. The 6th difference between Holmes Edition and OD&D is hit point inflation, hit die inflation, right? Munchkinism, as I like to call it, right? We start buffing all the characters. In Holmes Edition, a fighter has a D8 for hit points, same as in Greyhawk and onwards. OD&D and original D&D, everyone had D6 hit points, but you didn't hit dice, but you didn't get a hit die every level. That changed depending on your class. In AD&D, you have a D10 for your hit dice. Same thing, clerics have a D6 in Holmes. They have a D8 in AD&D. The magic user gets a D4 in both, so they're kind of thrown under the bus. But yeah, so hit dice inflation in AD&D. The 7th difference between Holmes and AD&D is initiative. In AD&D, they finally came up with an initiative rule, which was, roll a D6 and go ahead, and your dexterity add under modifier and all that fun stuff. In original D&D, figuring out initiative is kind of hard because original D&D is written with multiple personality disorder, right? D&D was designed with a D20 combat system. That's what Arneson used. But Gygax was afraid that the only people that were going to buy this book were chainmail players. And so in order to sell to the chainmail players, D&D, he wrote in, use chainmail, and then throughout the book, he added these sections. But it's never clear which rule you're supposed to be using when. And and so if you're not using chainmail, how you're supposed to do initiative in OD&D is a mystery. But anyway, in Holmes Edition, which is the one we're talking about, it's straight by dexterity order. Highest dex to lowest dex. Highest dex moves first. So if you have an 18 dex, you're going first. If you have a 3 dex, you're probably going last. If you're fighting a monster and you don't know what the monster's dex is, the rules say roll it right there. Roll 3d6, whatever it comes up with, that is their initiative. It's their dexterity, which controls their initiative. So that is how Holmes says to do initiative. The 8th difference between Holmes and AD&D is weapon damage. I mentioned this one a lot when we were doing the last episode, but in AD&D, every weapon does a different amount of damage, right? Your dagger does 1d4, your longsword does 1d6, 1d8. I think it's 1d8 actually. Your staff does, I think, 1d4. Your two-handed sword does a d10 or d12. I can't remember. In Holmes, just like in original D&D, hits do 1d6 of damage. Doesn't make a difference if you're hitting with a dagger. It doesn't make a difference if you're hitting with a great big warhammer. It's 1d6 no matter what. I think that makes sense. A lot of people don't like it. I think it makes sense because, again, combat isn't a blow-by-blow thing. It is the summation of an entire period of time. and you're saying how much damage did they do enough damage to kill the average person in that period of time? Because average person had 1d6 hit points, weapon did 1d6 points of damage, so on average, one hit would kill a person. It makes sense to me. I also like the way the new school games do it, like Dungeon World, where they make damage a function of class. So your magic user does 1d4 damage, and your fighter does 1d8 damage. I like that a lot. That makes sense to me. Again, a lot of people don't. It depends where you fall in that GNS triangle, right? If you're a simulationist, you're not going to like it. If you're a narrativist, you're going to love that. Anyway, weapon damage was that difference. The ninth difference between AD&D and Holmes is that in Holmes, even though every weapon only does 1d6 of damage, for some weird reason, daggers, you get 2 attacks per round. So if you really want to be a badass fighter, you're going to fight with a dagger because you get two attacks. Versus a sword where you only get 1. I don't get it. It strikes me as a stupid rule. It kind of survives into AD&D if you look in the right place, because in AD&D, where it's talking about ranged combat, it says that you can fire off 2 daggers in a round. So for ranged combat, that survived in AD&D, but for melee, it did not. The 10th difference is how long a round is. In AD&D, a round is 1 minute, which I actually like. And Holmes, a round is 6 seconds, which I think is too short. I don't like the short rounds. But it gets really weird because a dungeon turn is 10 minutes, right? And so then in D&D, they say, so you have 10 combat rounds per turn. Makes perfect sense. In Holmes, they say a combat round is only 6 seconds, but there's still 10 turns to the 10 rounds to the turn, so that turn is only a minute. It's silly. I don't get it. I don't know why they did it, but they did. My guess was that was Gary's original thought, was what he was going to do for AD&D. A lot of Holmes is Gary's draft for AD. Actually, it's J. Eric Holmes writing down OD&D, and then Gary getting it and putting in these new ideas for AD&D into it, some of which changed by the time it got published. But yeah, so combat round length is the other difference. The 11th difference is spell components. Spell components never existed until AD&D. So your verbal, somatic, material components, they don't exist in Holmes. They only exist in AD&D. They also didn't exist in OD&D. So spell components is our 11th difference. Our 12th difference is psionics. There are no psionics in Holmes. You could argue that because it's an appendix, they don't really exist in AD&D, but they exist. And as a kid, every group I knew played with them, and they played them wrong. But psionics is our 12th difference. Finally, last but not least, our 13th difference. This is last difference. And again, you might want to say this doesn't really count because it's appendix material. But the planes of existence don't exist in the Holmes edition. I'm not sure that one should count either, because I view the plane of existence as not part of the rules, but it's part of Gary's specific campaign world that he was trying to throw onto us. So I personally, I don't know. I think that's more of a game world thing than a rules thing, but you could argue the other way. I get it. So that's it. That is the 13 differences between the Holmes edition and AD&D. There's probably other little differences here and there. Probably if you were to go through each spell, Actually, that's probably a lot of differences in the spells, because in AD&D, each spell had like one line. By the time you get to AD&D, each spell has like multiple paragraphs. Holmes edition is somewhere in the middle. It has maybe a couple sentences, where AD&D only had one sentence. Personally, I like the looser definitions these days. As a kid, where, we had nothing but time and we were full of arguments, having everything spelled out was probably beneficial. But these days, where we're all adults and we all just run with it, being very loosey-goosey and just being able to run it without reading 5 pages of text, that's more my play style these days. But yeah, so I didn't go through those. I didn't go through all the monster listings to see what the differences there might be. So that's it. So thank you, Retro DM Ray, for that question. I hope this answered it. And thanks a lot for your comment. Next episode, I'll probably go into the other comments we got for that episode. And I got feedback from Jason of the Nerds, I can talk, of the Nerds Variety Cast. And I got a note from Daniel of Bandits Keep saying that he was going to send me feedback because he had things to say, but I haven't gotten it yet. But people are busy. We have adult responsibilities. So that might be coming. And there's a couple more people that commented on YouTube, and I'll answer all of those. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments, if you're watching on YouTube, just leave them down below. If you're listening to the podcast, or heck, even if you're on YouTube and you want to leave them the other way, go ahead and give me a call. It's 562-RPG-CAST is the phone number. Or you can email at feedback@decahedron.com. Remember that decahedron is with a K. Or you can, if you're overseas but you still want to do the online thing, you can you can go to sayhi.chat/decahedron. If you're on YouTube, all those are on the screen right now. And if you're listening to the podcast, all those are in the show notes. So thanks again for joining me on episode number 201. I hope you like the new format. Didn't really see a lot of change in it this time, other than I started with stuff that wasn't gaming related. And that's going to continue. Like I've said before, YouTube doesn't like that. YouTube wants you to be in that topic the second the camera turns on. And, I did that for a while. I don't like it. I'm going to do it like I do my zines, like I used to do the podcast, like podcasts I enjoy do it, which is talking about me a little bit first, because I think that's the difference between a podcast and a radio show, is that connection between the host and the audience, right? I invite you to comment. I answer you. You get to know me a little bit. Hopefully over time I get to know you. That's my philosophy. Anyway, thank you very much for watching and or listening. And until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.